morning. Good morning, all. Welcome back to Breakdowns for Breakfast. And on this episode of Breakdowns for Breakfast, we're going to be talking an album. One of my favorite albums of the 90s, the mid-90s, came out in 97, Radiohead's OK Computer. But in order to discuss OK Computer, I have to do this discussion with somebody else because it's just talking to myself at that point. And that's just weird. We don't want to hear me talking to myself. So, as always, I am here with Monster. Monster, say hello to the people waking up and going off to work, maybe? Are you?
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I hope your coffee is strong and you're ready to tackle the day and start your day off with a quick little discussion about some 90s alternative rock.
So that phrase, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I've always wondered what it is. Like, where does that term come from? I know I could look it up, but the etymology of that, I heard a comedian years ago say, what is bright-eyed and bushy-tailed? That's not waking up. That's a squirrel on crack. You know.
It is.
Yeah. But anyway, so 1997 Radiohead put out OK Computer. I am going to mix up my words all over the place today, but we are going to power through this. Monster, what was your experience with Radiohead and or this album before we decided to listen to this album intently and purposely and talk about it today?
So when I was a kid, especially like early to mid 90s, I listened to 94.5, the Rock Alternative, which was our, local rock station.
It was a great station.
God, it was so good. And that's where I discovered a lot of these bands from the 90s that I, would continue to listen to today. And Radiohead was not one that I listened to very often. I heard the singles. I heard, obviously, Creep from Pablo Honey.
I think everybody's heard Creep or a cover of it.
Yeah, pretty much. And then so I heard the couple of singles off of this record as well, but I never, ever, ever actually listened to a Radiohead album from start to finish until you brought this up. So I did listen to Pablo Honey to kind of hear where they went to OK Computer. And then I started Kid A. And we don't need to talk about Kid A. We'll just talk about OK Computer.
And I don't want to have a Kid A discussion, but was there another album after this? I feel like there was another album after this before Kid A. I'm not sure.
Honestly, you would know better than I would. I thought that it went Pablo Honey, OK Computer, and then Kid A, but there might have been something else in there.
There may have been. I'm not sure.
But as far as this album goes, I remember seeing the video for Paranoid Android probably 10 million times. I absolutely love that music video.
Yep, that music video is something special all in itself. I love that video. It's Radiohead is an art installation. And, their albums listen like art installations, which is actually something I have in my notes at some point. But that video is a great, visualization of what Radiohead is. They're going to...
But as far as my relationship with this album, that music video.
Yep, that's fair.
I love that song. I love that video. But yeah, I never really listened to the rest of the record until doing this.
That's fair. And I know that you've got feelings about this album now, and, and you are a person that, will take on an album earnestly and give it a fair shake. And that's one of the things I appreciate about you and one of the reasons why we do this. And, so I know that this album isn't your bouncy, fun stuff that you like to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
It's not bouncy and fun at all. If I had to describe this album, it would be 3 different words. Anxious, paranoid, and claustrophobic.
I can see that.
Yeah.
And if I can just get one thing out in the open,
sure.
Just to clarify before we even get started, I do not like Tom York's voice.
That's fair. That's fair. A lot of people don't.
And that is one of the things that I've, I don't want to sound like a broken record and bring it up over and over and over. So just let me get it out there in the open now. I don't like the way he sings. I see why other people could, but it's not for me. And that definitely colored my opinion on a few of these songs.
No, and that's fine. And I realized something actually in listening to this, because I know his voice rubs people the wrong way. And what I've realized is that I can actually listen to one of those bands like Rush or Coheed and Cambria, or name the band where the singer has a strange voice.
Mm-hmm.
If the music is good behind it, I can almost excuse the voice and find a reason for the voice to fit the music. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
if the voice is as strange or eccentric, I don't know, pick your word, as the music is, because this album, the music behind this is strange. It's weird. It's all over the place, but it's very well crafted. And I feel like his voice does slide in the right place, but it is not for everybody. I will say that for sure.
I agree kind of 50-50 with you.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah, I agree that at times his voice does slot in well and it's appropriate. And then there's other times where I would like the song more personally. I would like the song more had the vocal delivery tried something different.
And I understand that. And I'm interested to hear where you think that would fit, where the change would be better. I think that there are times, and I'm not going to be not critical of this album or Radiohead at all. I'm going to be more positive about it, obviously. But, you know, his voice is hard to chew on. It is. And there's sometimes where I don't feel like he needed to savor every syllable.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. He's very, it's not that it's monotone, but he's very, okay. He's very unenthusiastic. He sounds very lethargic in his delivery. And
a lot of times he sounds depressed.
Yes. And I get that's what they're going for. And on certain songs, that's appropriate. But then on other songs, it's like, well, and I'm sure we'll do some track by track, kind of getting into each song.
Mm-hmm.
So not to jump super far to the end here, but track 10, No Surprises, is the one that's the most egregious to me, because the music on that one is beautiful and it's heartbreaking. And his vocal is just, and for me, just sucks me right out of it, because
that's fine.
The music and the vocals just clash in such a way that it's uncomfortable and it loses me.
I get that. And on the previous episode, I ended the episode by saying that I feel like this is one of the more important albums to 90s music.
Mm-hmm.
And to support that, what I think that this album did was, this album, I feel like, really pushed things in a direction for 90s alt rock, really, and it pushed things in a direction that they weren't going. And it is responsible for what I feel like was a change in 90s pop rock sound. You saw a lot of people really change their sound. You really saw a change in production styles. And I feel like this is, and I know that some bands that were labeled early emo, the softer side of emo, the less screamo, I feel like this is one of the things that really pushed a big change in the emo sound, because there were a lot of sad, depressed kids that liked emo that also heard this. It was like, ooh, we can mix acoustic with electric stuff. And I feel like that this album in itself was an important piece of the evolution of music in the 90s.
One thing that I find is really interesting, and I know everybody's going to be like, Monster, shut the hell up, we don't care. But what I thought was really interesting is 311's record Transistor came out the same year. And both of those albums, like, this is like this, OK Computer's like the cynical older brother who has seen some shit and is not very happy. And then 311's like the ADHD, like, little brother who's just happy to be there. But they share the same sonic landscape of all the bleeps and bloops and trippy sound effects. And I just thought it was fascinating that these came out in the same year.
So the way I would actually compare the two And you're not wrong. And I think Transistor actually had a lot to do with, I think 97 was a great year for music, for rock music. But if 311's Transistor was a freshman in high school, OK Computer just came back from Desert Storm.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I can see that. And also, I think one of the biggest influences on this record that I hear, it took me a couple listens before I put my finger on it. I hear a lot of Pink Floyd. I hear a lot of that style of classic rock mixed in here.
And I actually put that on a few songs that really jumped out at me. That it was almost an inspiration, but an inspiration that they tried to use more of, like
it
use
doesn't
the
beat you over the head
arrangement.
Yeah,
let's put it that way. So you're right; it doesn't beat you over the head. So all right, let's talk about the tracks. All right, so and I'm not going to do a track by track because I don't feel like it needs it on this one, but based on conversations we've had in the past, we may end up doing it, but who knows? So
let me tell you. So let me start off by saying this.
All right.
Never heard this album before. I was familiar with the couple of singles, and I didn't know what to expect because if Paranoid Android is what you've heard off this album,
it's not this album.
There's 3 songs in that one song, so you don't really know what's going to happen. So, Airbag, Paranoid Android, Subterranean, Homesick Alien. I'm all in. All 3 of those songs, I'm having a great time.
Okay, wait. You said Paranoid Android. Subterranean. And what else?
The first song, Airbag.
Okay.
Then Paranoid, and then Subterranean.
So the first block of this album jumped out.
I was all in. I was having a great time.
It's a great opening part for this album. It really is a great section, and I have to agree with you. Those songs are great. I do love those songs altogether, but I do want to kind of break down those songs a little bit more. So, What did you like about Airbag? What was it that jumped out at you about Airbag?
I thought this one it reminded me of a more interesting Oasis. Like it had that bright Brit pop to it. There were some interesting chord progressions. It was bright and shimmery, but there was sort of this darkness under it. And I like his vocals on this one. This is one where the way he sings works, but I like that one. Like I thought it was a good opener as far as it's got some of the trippy bleeps and bloops, but it's also, you can hear the song and there's a structure to it.
So the thing about Airbag is a complete analog song, but it's constructed completely with computers. It's like they played everything they wanted the computer to do. And then I know for a fact the drums were played individually and then constructed into a beat. So they didn't use a drum machine per se. They used the drummer and then they constructed his drums in a way that worked for this song with the computer. What are your thoughts on that as a musician, like a drum machine as opposed to a real drummer sort of thing? Because I know that there's a big fight about that.
I've never been one to be opposed to using technology to your advantage to make music. I think there is such a thing as kind of overproducing something to where you kind of suck the life out of it. But a band that I loved from kind of this era was Fear Factory, and their big thing is the drums on those records sound impossible to play. And
they are.
That's because we're done on a keyboard. Right. And live, I've always heard that they wouldn't put anything on the record that an actual human couldn't do live, but some of that stuff is crazy what they do on the kick drum. But
Oh yeah.
anyway, so I'm not opposed to that. I think that if you can use the technology in your advantage to create something interesting, then go for it. It's the people that rely on it to do the records is when I'm start to kind of lose interest.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I'm just always curious on what some people think about that. But something I thought that was interesting is within this, and this is really only something I picked up more listening to the album through headphones, which I'm going to go ahead and say right now, this album is completely different through headphones than it is through speakers. It's, I think you kind of get sort of the same feel, but it's completely different through headphones. But something I picked up in the headphones is there's a damn cello in the song.
Yeah, there is. You're right. There's definitely some string accompaniment in the background there.
So as far as an opener for this album, you like it? You're good with it?
Yep.
I think that this as an opener tells you exactly what you're getting, even down to the lyrical content of it. I mean, it's a song about dying in a car crash and then being reincarnated. And it made me think of the Fight Club quote from when Tyler and the narrator, Jack, what do you want to call him? They meet for the first time on an airplane. And
spoilers.
The movie, it came out in 1998, I think. Yeah, we're past it. But
no spoilers.
But he says, they're on an airplane. He says an exit or procedure at 30,000 feet, the illusion of safety, which is true because, you can make a car as safe as you want, but if you get hit by a dump truck and a Pinto, then you're not going to fare well.
I thought you were going to bring up the quote about when you pass someone who's sitting down, do you give them the front or the back?
No, that's not the one I was going to go with. But
okay, fair enough.
And that I believe is just in the movie, not in the book. I haven't read the book in a long time, but
I don't know. I haven't read the book.
The book's wildly different, and I'm a fan of both of them.
Yeah.
So, anyway, all right. So you were a fan of 1, 2, and 3, so we are going to hit on all of those. So number 2, Paranoid Android. This was a contender for the greatest song of the 90s, in my opinion. I love this song. This is a great song. This was the lead single from the album. And the crazy thing about it is nobody puts out a 6.5 minute single, but they did. Right. But it's the longest song on the album, and it's also a long song for Radiohead. Radiohead has songs this long, but they're not that long. I mean, their songs are typically not that long. The one thing about this album, or this song, is it's got a multi-part structure to it. It's, definitely has movements that flow into and from each part, but then don't, but still work together. And I'm not a fan of fake endings that this song has. This album has a couple songs that do that, unless you're creating movements for the album. But then also, am I wrong in hearing that that's an acoustic bass in that song?
So there's so much going on in this song.
There is.
I would imagine, there's probably, just off the top of my head, I'd guess there's probably 8 different guitar tracks going on.
Yeah.
Because you hear all kinds of stuff going on. It's a weird song that somehow captures, like, it's kind of whimsical, but it's dark, like, and even at almost 7 minutes, there's one section, the section that starts around the 3 minute and 38 second mark, where it's like the real trippy little section. That part to me could have been shrunk a little, but other than that, like, doesn't feel like a long song. And when you watch the video that accompanies it, that's a ride. That's a good time. I like this one a lot. And I remember as soon as this song started, I immediately was like, oh yeah, God, I forgot how much I love this song.
Oh yeah.
It makes sense that this would be a single, even though it is kind of long. And that Doom doo 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 doom doom doo doom doom.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a good riff.
Oh yeah,
I love riffs. Like
oh yeah,
I will dissect songs and albums or whatever, but at the end of the day, I love a good riff, and that is a good riff.
oh yeah. No, it is. It's a riff that grabs your attention right off the bat, and like that riff actually to me sounds like the beginning of a heist movie. Not like a Mission Impossible type thing, but like that, and even into the next part where it begins to get chaotic, and it just
the shootout part.
Right. It's a very quick heist. It goes south really quick. So, and I can't remember what it was that you had. Oh, it was on the first episode we did, Finch's, the casket titled song. I can't remember. Do you know what this song title is a reference to?
No.
So the title is actually a reference to Android from Hitchhiker's Guide.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. If you haven't read the book, I recommend it. The book is really good, but also the movie that came out with Martin Freeman and Mos Def, it's a really good adaptation of it. I recommend it. Okay. So, but all right. And you also really liked number 3, Subterranean Homesick Alien. Now, I feel like Subterranean is a great track placement. Actually, I am a fan of the track placement on this album overall. That's been a criticism I've had of ones we've done in the past. But Subterranean does a great job of releasing the chaotic pressure valve that Paranoid Android created. And if you're listening to it all in one, it's like, you get to the end of it and you don't realize that you're like, oh man, okay. And then Subterranean comes on, you're like, okay. And I think that might be one of the reasons why you like it, because it flows really well.
It does flow really well. And this song just has this fun, trippy atmosphere that I think really, like you said, it feels good coming out of Paranoid Android being such, I don't want to say a heavy song, but it's a dense song. And then this one is very light. There is a structure to it, but it just kind of washes over you. This could have been on Transistor by 311. Like, this feels like that record. So this one totally worked for me. It's got the real simple little lead lines with the little atmosphere, spacey sounds. I really enjoyed this. This one felt very warm. Like, it felt like I said, it just kind of washes over you.
Yeah. And I found the song kind of teetered between just like well-crafted acoustic guitars, heavy riffs, and then what I came to like piece together as goth prog.
Goth prog.
Yeah.
That's a new one. I like that. You can go with that. Synthy goth prog.
Yep. So, and this album shows how to use a synth, not like straightforward, just keyboard synth. I'm talking about like, I saw an interview with David Bowie years ago where he was talking about recording one of his albums, and he was like, we started playing around with the synth and like, the switchboard, like a plug-in and unplug. He's like, we made this thing fart eventually. And, this album does that. This album really shows how a synth can be used, especially in recording drum tracks and then reassembling them.
So, not to go off on a huge tangent here, but Mick Gordon is one of my favorite musicians, and he does a lot of video game work and stuff. If you're interested to see what you can do with a synth and like computer stuff, he did it's only like maybe 20 minutes long, a little documentary on how he made the music for Doom 2016.
Okay.
And
I knew the name. I couldn't place where, but no, I got it.
It's basically a combination of 8-string guitars and like Soviet Russia era synth machines that he's like wiring backwards and like doing all this like horrible stuff to, and it creates this ridiculous soundscape. It's funny what you can do when you use musical equipment incorrectly.
Oh yeah. And I think that when you have somebody willing to do that is when you get something that really kind of shakes things up in a certain area, and he did in the video game landscape, for sure, video game soundtrack. So we went through that first 3 block, great block, and then exit music, quotations for a film, exit music for a film. And I find it interesting that this is not, like, this is where the album starts dropping off for you. And I'll tell you why. Because, yes, this song is stark, it's somber, it's dark, and yes, it has that Pink Floyd feel. It takes several minutes for a gradual build-up. Drums kick in. Radiohead explodes in their peak on this song. And this song feels like that feeling that I've had of going to see a movie that doesn't end well, doesn't end the way that I want it to, and I leave, and then I walk down the long hallway and open the doors, and it's light outside. That's how this song feels to me.
I was bored. Like, it's not a terrible song. I mean, it's not, but for me, by the time it kicks in at about almost 3 minutes, it's like 2:50. I was already, it was a little too late for me. I was kind of already.
It takes a long time to get there.
Yeah. And for me, the kick in wasn't memorable enough to, on subsequent listens, make me anticipate it. Like when we were talking about the Sleep Token records, Sleep Token has this way of building and building and building. And then when it kicks in, it might take 3, 4, 5 minutes before it kicks in. Mm-hmm. But then the kick in, the payoff is so good to me, like my style, that I'm waiting for it. I'm good with it. But with this one, I was just like, ooh, like, I don't know. This is the kind of 90s shoegaze alternative that I don't connect with.
So I thought that this song is intentional. The buildup is well crafted, but I'm right with you. It took too long to get there. This is a song that could be shrunk by a good bit. It is long. I don't like his vocal delivery on this song. Mm-hmm. It feels very whiny to me, but I do like his vocal delivery when the song picks up. Getting up to the build-up. I wish it had been more music and less him, but what, it came out in 97. They can't redo it, but it's not a needed track. But I do think that it's funny that the first 3 songs are so good and so strong, and I feel like they do work together really well. And then you get this song that feels like opening the doors after Avengers Endgame, where it ended, or not Endgame, the one before that, but it Infinity War, Forever Battle, but ended in a way that I wasn't expecting, and it was like, damn it, all right, let's go back out into the world now. And it's so I find it funny that that's what that song is. So
and so then coming out of that, you get into Letdown. Think of that one.
So I feel like the production value that they did on his voice, I don't think his delivery is great on this song, but I do think that they multi-tracked his voice, and you could definitely hear that in headphones. And he's duetting with himself. He's harmonizing with himself almost. But I do like the guitar work and what I felt like were drums played by Ringo Starr.
This one is a jumbled mess.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I'm with you on that.
And maybe again, that's one of those things that, like the Beatles, Frank Zappa, all these like avant-garde musicians, when they make stuff that sounds like noise, you either go, wow, that's so interesting and incredible, or you go, this sounds like noise. And for me, this was noise. Like, it sounded like they had 2 songs. They wanted to do a bright Britpop song, and they wanted to do another trippy, spacey, dark song. And instead of doing two songs, they just played them at the same time. And no, the vocals don't work for me. I don't. This is the Radiohead that does not work for me.
So I'm with you on it sounds like noise, but I feel like it sounds like intentional noise. And I feel like this is one of the songs where the production style shines the brightest because they actually do something that, and I had to look into it because when I heard it, I've listened to this album a couple times now through headphones, just out of curiosity the first time. And then afterwards, I was like, I need to do that again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they actually do something that really wasn't done much this time, which is a production style, pioneered, or I don't want to say pioneered, but really brought to life more by Phil Spector, which was the wall of sound. The wall of sound was not something you heard much at this point, which was something that I feel like Radiohead really did in the 90s, which was they pushed that we can get loud intentionally and we could get loud with purpose. And I feel like that's what they did. And I liked it. They really employed a production style on this album as a whole. And I'm going to keep saying that. I'm going to keep saying it. Just get used to it. The fact that, they multi-tracked his vocals and he's harmonizing and duetting with himself. And the wall of sound, it's just the production value on the song, I think, is great. I don't like the song, though.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. It's fine. Yeah. I just, like I said, all of that, everything that you just said is true. All of that's in there. But does that make it an enjoyable song to listen to? No, at least not for me. And so what's interesting is after the complicated jumble that is Letdown, Karma Police is almost the exact opposite.
This is what you get when you mess with us.
Right.
Because it's very stark. And I'll be honest, I remember hearing this one when I was a kid and, 15 years old, this is boring. Like right. I'm not, that doesn't speak to me at all. As an adult, I hear the song craft in there and it's a catchy pop song. Very simple, well written. Mm-hmm. I like it. I don't love it, but I like it.
Right. And, this was one of the more conventional moments on this album. It's more, it was a single. It was the second single for this album. It did get heavy radio play. It hit number 8 in UK, but it's not their most standout song to me. And, one of the things about Radiohead is their radio songs are not their standout songs to me.
No.
Radio songs are fine. And that's the thing about this song is it's fine. It all originated actually, the Karma Police title actually all originated from an in-joke, an inside joke in the band where Johnny Greenwood in the band, he said, whenever someone was behaving in a particularly shitty way, we'd say the Karma Police will catch up to him sooner or later. Okay, cool. That doesn't make me like the song anymore. It's a fine song.
Put it this way. I think most Radiohead fans are kind of like Tool fans or
Coheed fans.
One of the kind of.
Yeah, I'm a Coheed fan and I'm not one of the shithead elitist Coheed fans, but
no.
When you have bands like this that create a mood with albums and stuff, you do have fans that are the elitists, like, no, it's good, man. It's good.
Well,
listen.
So
you don't get it, man.
Right. And I guess the point that I'm trying to make is if you are a diehard Radiohead fan and this is the song people know by them, Creep, like those are the songs people know. It's like, you're missing it. Like that's not Radiohead. Like that's right. The single. That's the radio song. But just taking it for what it is, it's not particularly interesting. Mm-hmm. It's not particularly standoutish, but it's a well-crafted, simple pop song, and it's fun.
Right. I feel like it was probably a song written for the album that was, we need to write a single.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Because Paranoid Android doesn't sound like a single. It just sounds like this is a special song. We're going to release it, and it's so good, people are going to play it at 6.5 minutes long.
Right.
Where this, you're right. This sounds like, well, let's write something short and catchy and simple that can, coming off a Creep,
Yeah, because that's still what everyone remembers if they didn't catch the other single off this album. And to be honest, it's a shame, but Radiohead's one of those bands that it's easy to miss the single if the single doesn't get picked up and played everywhere like Creep did. Creep, I think, is the most well-known Radiohead song.
Sure.
But Creep is not Radiohead by any means. It was very early Radiohead. Very early single-minded Radiohead, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But I think later on we got In Rainbows and Amnesiac, and those are great albums, which Amnesiac is pretty much just leftover Kid A stuff. Okay. It's a great album, but I think I've only listened to it maybe twice.
Okay.
I don't have a need to go back to it. I have it upstairs, but I don't need to go back to it. Anyway, we're not talking about Amnesiac. We're talking about OK Computer. All right. One that I was going to want to talk about, and I still want to talk about, track 7, Fitter Happier.
Getting on better with your associate employee contemporaries. At ease. Eating well. No more microwave dinners and saturated fats. A patient better driver. A safer car. Baby smiling in
It's just a weird little interlude that got stuck in the album. It's just words put into Macintosh's synthesized voice, Fred, that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
And it was all put out. And it was all these kind of odd statements about what this album was supposed to be about in its entirety: technology, conformity, creeping fascism, emotional emptiness, and pragmatism over idealism. I feel like this was a little interlude that maybe was needed as kind of a palate cleanser for this heavy ass album, but also at the same time, I don't think it was fully needed. Give me a weird, funky little synthesized piano thing. Give me just you musicians, no Tom York, and I'd be fine with it.
I think this is fine. Just cut it in half. It's just too long. It
is.
I get the little palate cleanser idea, and the little one-liners are kind of unsettling, and the way they're spoken and everything, but it just goes on for too long. If it was a minute long, sure. I wouldn't mind, but because it does go on for over 2 minutes, you're just sort of like, okay, yeah, I get it.
It doesn't need to be 2 minutes, and I think they realized that it was getting a little bit boring, but maybe they felt like it was necessary. And that's when you hear Frozen Winter shit, and it makes you like, what? Okay. So Tom York said that he wrote it in 10 minutes after a period of writer's block, realizing that he had instantly created the most upsetting thing I've ever written. And I don't feel like it. I feel like it's one of the most skipped tracks he's ever written.
Probably. Yeah. But
sorry,
I will
Tom.
say,
Couldn't disagree.
I will say, again, talking about sort of track listings and the flow of the record, I think electioneering, am I saying it right?
Yep.
Okay.
I think so. I think that's how I've always pronounced it in my head.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever said it out loud. Electioneering. There, I've broken my silence on it. I don't know.
There you go. Good placement for this one, because this one rocks a little bit more than the past 2 or 3 tracks that we've gotten. So I think it was smart to come out of that with a little bit more of I hesitate to call it a rock song because it's still kind of trippy and weird,
right.
But it has a little bit more of a groove and a rock tone to it than the previous 3 or 4.
So, Electioneering is one of the heaviest tracks that Radiohead has ever written.
Yeah.
It does groove a bit more, like you were saying. It's definitely more of a. I feel like it would belong more on Pablo Honey before this.
It does, yeah, it does. It's that vibe better.
It's a carryover. It's a leftover.
Okay.
I don't know if it actually is. That's just how I feel about it. So
It sounds like it could have been something they were working on, and then they kind of OK computered it up a little bit and put it on this record.
And what's strange about this song is it's not my favorite, but I always find myself grooving to this song. Like I always feel this song, but this is where this album really starts to fall off for me. I feel like the front half of this album is really strong. I feel like the back half is not, the back third, I guess, is not. And it's about halfway through this song, I kind of lose it. I kind of lose this album overall.
9, 10, 11, and 12. Nope.
Yep.
Not for me. I understand, like in all 4 of those songs, there are bits and pieces that I acknowledge are good. But as songs from start to finish, none of those 4 are songs that I want to listen to again. They're just, especially The Tourist. For me, that is just boring. And again, part of that's my fault. Part of that is what I like to listen to. Part of that is from a musician's standpoint. There's nothing going on there. Yeah, this whole section of the record, a matter of fact, this morning, kind of getting prepared for this, I started backwards. I started at track 12.
That's interesting. I haven't done that before. I'm gonna do that.
And to be honest with you, I didn't get very far on that experiment, but it almost might work better for me because I feel like the album will gradually step up if you go that way. Because going this direction, the last couple songs on here are a slog for me.
So, Climbing Up the Walls. It takes too long. It takes 3 minutes. At 3 minutes is when the climax of the song happens. That is too long for a build-up for me. It's just,
and his voice is just, I can't do it on this one.
I understand he's the lead singer, but I need him to be a more well-placed sparing lead singer, if that makes sense. Yeah. So Climbing Up the Walls, the only things I really have to say about it is it does feel like, and go back and listen to it with this in mind, it feels like it would be right at home on a horror movie soundtrack. I hear that. And I feel like that was what they wrote it for. It feels like there. So we got the Exit movie music. This one feels like it should be in the beginning, I guess.
And then I mentioned this earlier, the next song, No Surprises. The little guitar line at the beginning is beautiful, and it sounds familiar for some reason. I don't know if it's just because I've heard the song before, or if it's borrowing something from a sort of like a nursery rhyme kind of song or something. But then as soon as he starts singing, it is so monotone and that it just sucks the joy out of it. I don't know what he's going for. It doesn't work for me.
So no surprises. I love the chorus of the song. I don't love the song overall. It's not really a song that jumps out at me. And I feel like this song sounds like if Paul McCartney wrote nursery rhymes.
Yeah, but if Paul McCartney was singing this song, I would immediately like it 1,000 times better.
That's fair. I personally don't really like Paul McCartney's voice, his current voice. I like his younger voice.
if it was sung by a vocalist who was trying to make it like, I feel like on this song, he's purposely trying to sound that way with his vocals. Like he wants it to be, I don't want to say unpleasant, but he doesn't want it to be poppy and catchy. And whereas if you had a guy like, so funny that we're doing a Radiohead to Paul McCartney thing here,
Yep.
but not necessarily Paul McCartney, but a guy that had a more understanding, like trying to write a pop song, it would go over better. Like, for example, a contemporary, like if Dave Grohl was singing that,
Mm-hmm.
or even Kurt Cobain was singing that, like I feel like this would have been a song I would have really enjoyed. But because of the vocal delivery, I just, it rubs me the wrong way.
So, okay, let's round out the album by talking about number 12, The Tourist. So, yes, we have to. We're going to, because I think it's an important thing when we're talking about an album to talk about the bookends of the album.
Well, let me just say, you skipped Lucky,
Yeah.
and that's fine. We can skip Lucky.
I have no attachment to Lucky. In fact, when I was listening to it for this, I don't ever remember really hearing Lucky before because the end of this album drops off for me.
Yeah.
But I took another listen to every track, and The Tourist is a waltz.
As slow and boringly as possible. Yes.
Yeah. It's a waltz prog rock song.
They occasionally hit these notes that I find interesting, but it is so slow and meandering that I fall asleep. Like it's hard for me to even pay attention to it because it's so sparse. I don't know. Like I get why people like it. I can understand why someone would listen to that song and that song speaks to them. I have no nostalgic attachment to it. So coming into it as a musician, that's kind of what I'm focusing on. And it's just dull and unlively.
So I think this is one of I feel like the rhythm section of Radiohead overall deserves more praise. I do. And this one, the fact that he uses brushes, you could definitely hear brushes, and the triangle is rather prominent, I think is an interesting choice. But this was actually one of the things I was referencing in the very beginning when I was talking about Tom York savors and chews on every syllable. And that's what he does here. And the thing about it is I had to really listen to this track from the standpoint of it being a closer to the album. And I actually think it's a great closer to the album because, like I said in the beginning, this album feels anxious and paranoid. And this song closes with that same feeling.
You can see that. If this is a song you're going to put on your record, I don't know where else you put it.
Right.
It's so long and, like I said, meandering that you can't put it in the middle of your record. So this, honestly, this almost feels like it was written to be the last song.
That's fair. I get that.
I feel like this wasn't, I feel like some records are written, hey, we've got 25 songs. Let's cut it down to 12 or 15.
Let's pick our best.
Yeah. And then we'll just kind of slot them in a way that feels pretty good. Where this feels more like, hey guys, I got this idea of how we can close the record. I've got this song and,
So in title only, I feel like exit music would have been better.
Sure.
So in title only, I like its placement because it's after that block and what the song feels like to me. So yeah, but I'm with you that this does feel like it was written as a closer, but his vocals really grate my nerves on that one because he does draw out everything. And it's just, come on, man, just pick it up. I do know that Tom York has a great voice when he uses it in certain ways, but he does have a great range, but he doesn't use it in the way that he should. Cause I've heard him do vocals on other people's stuff. And I've heard great vocals from him, but not here. Not here.
Yeah. So just kind of, starting to get into the general thoughts and ranking here at the end. I want to say thank you for bringing this record up, because I feel like when it comes to 90s alternative, there's several bands that I listen to a lot of. And even if I'm not super familiar with their entire catalog, there was a record or two that I owned and really listened to or whatever. And Radiohead was always sort of a bare spot. It was one that the singles didn't do it for me. So I never really delved deeper. And because of you bringing this up, I listened to Pablo Honey and this one. My personal taste, Pablo Honey is more my speed. I think that's a really good, like, alternative rock record. And I can appreciate where they're going with this one. Like, I see what they're aiming for. And again, that's something else that we have to take into consideration about these records. This was 1997. Not a lot of bands, especially coming out of that more simple, alternative pop rock kind of sound that they had, were going this weird that fast. So I do appreciate listening to it, and I do appreciate what they were striving for here.
So I feel like the early 90s was kind of like a 2/4 with distortion, and this is like an 8/17. And because it's just, it's all over the place. I don't know. The beginning of the 90s was, really pulling out of punk and trying to separate itself from glam rock. And it was trying to pull in something new. And so it was still very basic. And one of the reasons why I like it is it's basic, it's straightforward, it's rock and roll, man, but it's not complicated. And then it was almost like when Kurt Cobain died, we saw things get a little more complicated, a little more muddied waters. And then this album comes out, and then it was like people went, we have a direction. Or excuse me, not this album, this year came around, because there was a lot of good music in this year. But, you had the 311 transistor bouncy end of technical, progression. And then you had this that was the sad and depressed technical progression. And I think that both ends of the spectrum kind of really push things forward. So all right, go on.
Another, I was just going to say, and I want to make sure I've got the dates correct, but I'm pretty sure I do. So right around this time, 97, 96, that's when you started seeing the nu metal stuff start to poke its head out too.
Right.
And do I hear a lot of that in here? No, of course not. But you can hear other bands borrowing from it. I think you can hear some Radiohead in stuff like early Deftones, even in like, $3 Bills, Y'all by Limp Bizkit came out in 97. And there is some, for what they're known for now, that first album has some weird, dark, spacey nonsense going on.
It does.
So
it was a very experimental album.
It was. And I think you're right. I think 1997 was kind of was an interesting year.
I think from Radiohead and the 97, where they were incorporating a lot more electronic sounds into what was pushed off of the electronic sound from the 80s. We saw a lot of that put into it. And then we saw nu metal follow it right behind it. And I think from the early 90s to this year, this little era that exists, to the 98 to 2002, I feel like all of those things combined is what got us emo.
Yeah, and talking about adding the electronics and stuff, late 90s, early 2000s is when you saw the nu metal craze where everybody had a DJ or a synth player. And again, was that a 1-to-1 from Radiohead to that? Maybe not. But 1997, this era of bleep and bloop alternative rock.
Bleep and bloop.
Definitely lends itself to that. Do you want to go ahead and do kind of our final thoughts here?
Well, I was going to say, yes, this is a headphones album. You can listen to it without it, of course, but you're going to get a lot more with headphones.
So,
and going back to what we said before, a good pair of over-ear headphones.
So I'm kind of on the fence about that because to me, this is the kind of album that if it's on in the background while I'm doing stuff, it's fine. Because for me, there's not a whole lot that I need to focus on. It's just, especially those last 3 or 4 songs where it's just meandering Tom
Yeah.
York waddling over everything, whatever. And so for me, yeah, like there is some stuff going on that you won't pick up like nuance wise. But for me, I don't know that it warrants that much attention from me. It's fine to just be on.
Yeah, no, I get that. And that's the thing that's kind of what I was getting at is like, you can listen to it other ways, but I think to fully immerse yourself into this album and get everything out of it, there are so many little nuances of things happening in different ears through headphones, like in the song I was talking about, how he's harmonizing with himself and all. So I want you to go ahead and give me your closing statement on OK Computer first.
Okay. So Radiohead is not a band that I paid a lot of attention to in the 90s. I was familiar with the singles and the videos, but that was about as far as my knowledge reached. Pablo Honey was a much more straightforward alternative rock record, and that's more my speed. With OK Computer, Radiohead tried to expand on their sound, adding more complex song structures and unique trippy soundscapes to their sound. I feel like on some tracks, the band is more concerned with being weird than writing a good song, and those are the tracks that don't work as well for me. As a whole, I can see why this was popular, and you can clearly hear its influence on other bands from that era and even today. However, being someone who did not hear it when it first came out and hearing it over 20 years later, some of it sounds dated and not everything clicks for me. Judging it solely on its content and not its cultural significance, 1 to 10, I give it about a 5.5.
Okay. And you said something in there, and I actually thought about this halfway through, but what song was it that the music video had him with the bowl on his head and filling up with water? That was No Surprises, actually. Yeah.
That was off this album?
Yeah, that was off this album.
Oh, okay.
But there's a great little behind the scenes thing if you can find it, and I'll try to link it with this episode if I can find it, but I don't know where it is anymore. I don't know how long ago I saw it, but he actually did that whole thing. And I would like to say he did it in one take, but it took about 30 takes to get there because he would get about, I don't know, halfway through it, then he'd take a breath and like have to like pull the cord and like dump the water and be like, well, shit. Okay. All right. Let's do it again. And eventually they were like, dude, we can make it look that way. He's like, no, we're going to do this. So I appreciate Tom York's dedication in that, Okay. Cause that was like 3 minutes of just not breathing and water filling up and claustrophobia. So
yeah, it doesn't make me feel good. I don't like that.
All right. My rounding out this album. I get it. Radiohead rubs a lot of people the wrong way. The albums can drag out with a few tracks that catch the ear. A lot of people just find them cold, and Tom York's voice is not for everyone. Anytime a band like this comes along, a little blowback is inevitable. I will admit they are dark and weird as a band, and that isn't for everyone. Their albums can sound like art installations, but we live in a world where bands like Coldplay, Muse, and Keane took this sound and made it more radio-friendly. In cases like that, you couldn't be blamed to wonder, does the original stand up after all? Radiohead knows their way around a song. That's not debatable. I messed up my word there. Anyway, they know how to build a song and a mood. Radiohead's rhythm section doesn't get a lot of attention, but they deserve a lot of credit. Each section of this band deserves more attention and is well crafted alone. Together, each part made a great album, but better if you're a little sad and you like the start of things. Altogether, I gave this album a 7. So I feel like within our ratings, we should allow for nostalgia points because
I know. Yeah, for sure.
I feel like this album, I gave it a higher rating because I've lived with it for so long and because it meant a lot to me. I mean, in my, depressed high school years, this album was on all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't go back to this album all the time.
Right.
It's not one I put on regularly. I can say that a few of the songs have made it to my liked playlist, but I think that they are like the singles from it. I don't even know. It's been a while since I actually threw those on.
Yeah, and to your point, there's definitely albums that I really, really love that I definitely would put in my favorites that I gotta be in the mood to listen to it. I can't
Right.
listen to it all the time. One that I'm sure we will do on this show eventually is Darkest Days by Stabbing Westward.
Actually, when you talked about radio station earlier, they put on a free concert downtown.
I was there.
I was there with that too. I was there. See, Danger and Monster were in the same space before we actually knew each other. So.
Okay. Perfect segue. Check this out. That was my second big concert. The second big concert I ever went to was Stabbing Westward, downtown, Winston-Salem, free show.
Okay. I'll be seeing Stabbing Westward in September at Blue Ridge. I'm excited.
My first big concert was 311. In 1997.
Okay.
On the Transistor Tour.
All right.
Guess who their opening acts were?
Who?
Incubus.
Yeah.
And next week's episode.
Yep.
Sugar Ray.
All right. I was going to ask you what album we were going to talk about next week, but Sugar Ray and what album?
Floored.
The most underrated album of theirs. Which,
ironically enough, came out in 1997.
Yep. So
I think that's going to be a fun one to talk about.
All right. We will get into Sugar Ray's Floored.
Put it this way. It'll be a lot more fun than this album was.
It'll probably be a more fun episode to listen to and a more fun album to listen to because, let's be honest, this is not a fun album. It's not.
You can say a lot of things about Radiohead, but you can't call them fun.
No. Anxiety ridden is, yeah. Anyway.
Sad.
Thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you for listening to this newest episode, I guess, of Breakdowns for Breakfast. Good morning, and enjoy your day at work. We are still working on how to sign off. If you have a suggestion, shoot us an email, dangerandsarge@gmail.com. And yeah, thanks for listening. Bye.
Later.